This morning's presentation, what your business is missing without a finance director. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Malcolm Palmer. I am the managing partner of A4G LLP. I think most of you are clients of ours, so you'll know that our offices are just down the road on the A20. One of the bits of feedback that I get about these seminars is that one of the things our clients like is just to know a little bit about how everybody else is finding things economically at the moment. I know many of you work incredibly hard every single day, and sometimes what's going on out there is just based on your one business. So it's quite useful to know how things are for everybody else. What we're seeing at the moment is that there's very much mixed messages coming out from our clients. Some industries seem to be in a little bit of a boom at the moment, and some industries seem to be struggling quite significantly. And it's not just from client to client, it's very much from industry to industry. And perhaps one or two of the issues we'll touch on today might explain the reasons for some of that. Overall, gross domestic product in the UK is up by 2.9%. from across 2014, but it has started to slow this year, and that's possibly as the government funds that have been put into trying to boost the economy is now being reined in a little bit due to the austerity measures, and where some of the growth that's been happening for many of our clients has been indirectly down to that government money. That's not going to be there so much. So perhaps we're sort of heading towards, over the next couple of years, a very, very slow growth. Interest rate wise, well, I haven't got a crystal ball on that. There's all sorts of factors that suggest that interest rates are going to go up, but there's also factors like the risk of deflation and what's happening in China that suggests that interest rates might even need to come down. So we're possibly safe for another year or so on that front. Some of the interesting things that are coming out are about the employment numbers. Now, total employment in the UK is now back to the same point that it was before we had the so-called credit crunch, which turned into the recession. That's 780,000 extra people employed in the UK in the past 12 months. And interestingly, for a business such as ours, where all our clients are self-employed, 40% of that growth has come in self-employment. That's an awful lot of extra self-employed people. Oops, sorry, clicking too fast there. 1 in 7 working people are self-employed now, which is up 8% on the last 12 months, up to 4.5 million. The biggest part of that usually comes from the construction industry, but actually that has actually shown a little bit of a decline, 4.3% down. Again, that's possibly because where the government boosts to the economy are now being reined in a little bit. Some of those bigger construction projects that were initiated maybe 5-6 years ago are starting to come to an end and not being replaced by as many new ones online. So that's the first yearly fall in a couple of years, and quite a significant one. The forecast, though, is that there will be a small increase in the construction industry over the next 12 months. Meanwhile, wages over the last 12 months on average have gone up by 3%, but again, this is just starting to slow down now as the economy slows. One of the things I thought I'd tell you about was a little BBC research programme that was undertaken recently, which looked at the likelihood of 395 different professions and jobs being replaced by a robot. So a robot might not necessarily be, walking, talking robot that we all imagine, but just could simply be computerisation, just general automation. So this looked at the likelihood of your job being replaced by a robot in the next 5 years. There's some quite scary numbers that came out from this. So at the top, it suggested that in 5 years, a telephone salesperson is 99% likely to be replaced by a robot. Now, I found that a little bit hard to believe, but actually, if you think about it, you know, we're all 5 years ago, we were all annoyed by those phone calls that get through to us by people trying to sell us something. Now we get even more annoyed by the fact that when those phone calls come through, it's not even actually a person at the other end of the line. So potentially, in 5 years' time, almost all that telephone sales stuff is going to be automated. Security was suggesting 89%. Now, I'm not quite sure what that covered, but for those of you old enough to remember Doctor Who back in the 70s and 80s, there was a little dog he had there called K9. So perhaps the security will be done by metal dogs barking at potential criminals about to break in. Takes a little bit of imagination to visualise how some of this would happen, but if you think about what's already happening with Google, they've now got these driverless cars, and perhaps in 5 years' time we might all be getting taxi rides around London without having to listen to the opinions of a London cabbie. Some of the jobs that were suggested to be at medium risk were cleaners, 57%. Love it when the clicker doesn't work. A scaffolder, 54.5%. I'm not quite sure how a robot would do scaffolding, but somebody's probably working on it as we speak. Certainly help on that the health and safety issues. Yeah, drivers, 51.3%. That's that issue about driverless cars, maybe. And a credit controller, 51.2% likely to be replaced by robot or automation. Now, one of our speakers, our fourth speaker, Kirsten, is going to talk about what the finance director would do in many businesses and how we're delivering some of those services for our clients. And one of the interesting things is the automation of the credit control process. Joe, who's speaking next, is going to talk about a particular software product that will enable people to do that. So some sort of scary numbers there. So what can you do to reduce the risk of your business or job being replaced by automation? Well, one option is to consider becoming a vet, 3.8% likely of that, a dentist, 2.1%, or a publican, 0.4%. I'm not sure that's a good move at the moment as pubs are closing down, and I'm not sure that being a vet or a dentist is for everyone really. So perhaps you need to consider one or two other options instead. The reality is that whatever industry you're in, you need to embrace technology in one way or another.